Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business, their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, I just want to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, and we couldn't do the show without them. This week, we're going to have a hot topic, which is micro businesses. What more could we do to help them? That's our hot topic for this week. Okay, let's meet the panel. We've got Richard Graham, who was the MP for Gloucester for 14 years and was trade envoy for 4 prime ministers. He's the chairman of Gloucester History Festival. So we find out all about this year's fantastic event, which starts on the 6th of September. And I know there is an amazing lineup you've got this year, Richard. Really, really exciting stuff. We got Roger White, MD of White House IT Solutions. Roger is an IT specialist, been in business for over 30 years. Our businesses have never been under so much threat from cyber attack. So we'll hear from him about the marketplace, what's new in the cyber world, and also we'll ask him for his top 3 cyber tips as well. We got Councillor Julian Tooke, Cabinet Member for Business, Economic Development, Planning and Infrastructure. He's a Liberal Democrat County Councillor for Pitfield and St Paul's. It's a very long title on a business card, but he is actually a businessman in his own words, been in business for over 35 years, and he's new to politics. So we'll find all about that. And what are his thoughts and plans to help the business community in Gloucestershire County Council? We got Samina Khan. She is the founder and owner of Gold Earth, handcrafted oils of hair, skin, and soil from hair loss to healing, based in Highworth. She launched the company 9 months ago, and it's tough running a small business. Let's be honest about it. So we'll find out how the business is going, more about the products, and what it's like being a micro business touring the craft stores and town markets. So thank you ever so much for the panel this morning. Looking forward to catching you all up. Let's have a look at today's newspapers. Okay, let's have a look. So we have, I won't cave in to militant doctors, says the Daily Mail. The Times, PM strikes pose threat to NHS as we know it. The Daily Express, doctors' 5-day strike is a threat to lives. The Guardian, let aid in, pleads UN chief. The I paper, UK ready to recognise Palestinian state in peace deal. The Mirror, Britain must do more. The Star, Incredible Hulk. The Sun, taking a liberty. The Daily Telegraph, farms close at record rate after IHT raid. The Financial Times, Telsa shares tumble. And the Metro, good luck, let's go. It's a real mixed bag of headlines today. Let's start with you, Richard. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you again. What have you picked out from the papers?
Well, it would be fun to talk about the Lionesses and some of the other headlines, Mark, but I've chosen really just to focus on the story about the BMA strikes and what impact that will have on residents across Gloucestershire, because, I've been here, done this, and it's not an easy situation when you've got people whose long-awaited appointments, often for surgery on knees, hips, those sorts of things, are delayed yet again. Which is the likely impact, let's wait and see, of what's going to happen with these junior doctor strikes. And actually, I'm with the Prime Minister on this one. I do think...
He's just frozen in mid-flow. That's always the way, isn't it?
Helpful. I think they've had a good paying. Some people are likely to be suffering as a result of this move. So let's hope that the NHS in Gloucestershire and the Gloucestershire Royal Hospital can come through this in one piece without having to cancel too many operations, because they need time to be able to get down the backlogs and not be distracted by strikes.
Could agree with you more, Richard, on that one. They just seem to be getting a grip on it as well. It's the last thing we all need. Thanks ever so much for that. Julian, I'm going to bring you in. Great to see you. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
I've got 2 stories that I find really interesting. So throughout my life, or throughout my career, I've made money by selling things abroad. So I feel really passionately about international trade. So I find the Indian trade deal really interesting. I find it interesting because India's always been quite a protectionist market, and actually the world has been becoming more protectionist, and that's going against the trend. having this trade deal. I think it's basically very positive. It's meant to bring 4.8 billion to the economy over time, over 2,200 jobs, all good stuff. Some would say it can only happen because Brexit happened, and there's a truth to that. However, I'm a Liberal Democrat, and I'm also someone who believes in international trade. So although the Indian deal was really positive, and I wish it well, and well done to the government, I always think about how these kind of deals dwarf what we used to have with the EU. So 1.9% of exports go to India, 48% go to the EU. The economy has shrunk, everyone says that. So exports to the EU have dropped by 18% since 2019. So for me, as I say, the challenge is for global Britain to trade globally. We need these kind of deals, but how do we get back to the position that we used to have as a trading nation? Because that's so important for Gloucestershire. I also wanted to pick up on the Tesla story. So that's coming from the FT about Tesla share value dropping by 37%. In a sense, I find that story interesting on a number of fronts, because in a sense that Tesla has suffered because of US protectionism. So we've talked about the benefits of bringing down trade barriers. That's an American company suffering to some extent because trade barriers are being put up by the tariffs. I find it also interesting because it's a lesson, I think, to all people who are interested in politics and are also in business about how you can damage your brand if your politics gets muddled up with your business. And, our political parties are significantly funded by business. So there's a kind of lesson there for them. Be careful. Also interesting because Tesla has done very well in terms of environmental regulation in the US, and Trump is looking at rolling those things back. So government can support business and grow it, but it can also shrink business when it changes its mind about what's a good thing to do. So I find both those stories really interesting.
Spot on. I totally agree with you there as well. Okay, I'm going to bring you in, Samina, actually, on this, because we're talking about internationalism, and I know the story that you picked out from the papers today has a bit to play on that as well.
So this one, it actually really saddened me because there was a 15-year-old girl, Isabel, who were put in isolation for supporting, or she just had the T-shirt or flag of Union Jack. Now, I was truly saddened reading this as someone who wasn't born here, but has proudly made the home here in the UK. My children are British, going to school here. This is our home. And I believe the Union Jack is more than a flag. It represents unity, freedom, and contribution of every community that's helped shape this country. Now, Culture Day should be about inclusion, not exclusion. Our children should be encouraged to celebrate all part of their identity, and British or beyond. Singling out of the Union Jack sends the wrong message, especially when other national flags are welcome. Respecting diversity must be including to everyone, not that include those who are proud to call British home. Now, I am proud. I would have the Union Jack on my house. I want my children and children would like, but this is our home. So tomorrow, my 15-year-old son, he wants to go into the Air Force. Does that mean he can go into the Air Force or he can go into the British Army, but he cannot have the Union Jack? That, to me, that I just don't agree with that at all. And I think the teachers should be teaching that in school. Just because some people used it the wrong way, that's not the message. That shouldn't be the final message.
So great to hear that. I totally agree with you there. Look at me, I've got my Union Jack right here behind me. So it's something I'm very proud of, to be British. I've stood under the flag across different continents and countries, for my country, and I'm very proud of that as well. And I think we should be more proud of our state, and we are. the Great Britain of multinationals, multinationals. Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Samina. Roger, I'm sorry, Samina, where are you from? You said you're from India originally as well.
No, I'm not Indian. I'm actually from Khyber Pass in border to Afghanistan, which is north of Pakistan.
Oh, wow. Okay, we'll have another conversation about this another time.
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Roger, great to have you on the show, mate. What have you picked out from the papers?
So, being an IT business person, I'm going to pick cyber security, and there's an article in the Times as well about the headline is I stole 1.2 million in a 40-minute call. And essentially there's this article in the Times about a chap called Alexander Wood, who had stole a lot of money over the years, and is now just come out of jail, and he's done it by effectively fraud. And the article is saying that 41% of all reported crime now is fraud related. And this is this is not to do with the cyber attack. This is just basically convincing people to transfer their money to a safe account, and effectively getting them to authorize the payment by conning them, basically. And then also, interestingly, this week, the BBC have run a big article online about cyber attacks, because we've seen a lot of cyber attacks recently, and obviously the big one is the M&S attack. And the BBC ran the Panorama programme this week, was all about how cyber attacks are getting worse, and they got international, into the detail of it all. And there was a company, 150-year-old company, freight company with something like 700 employees, that was put out of business. This is actually a few years ago, and it was all about how a ransomware attack actually put the company out of business. But the point of this is that the whole thing is getting worse. Whether it's you could think that it's more state-sponsored activity, but it does feel, running an IT company, that we are under attack as a nation, without going into too much drama. But it is becoming it's always been a problem, but it's getting worse. The number of attacks and attempts are increasing massively. And obviously the massive M&S one, and the Co-op, and a few years ago Harrods, these are all our big names, are all being attacked, and it's cost M&S something like £300 million, and their systems have taken months to recover. And it feels like it's a constant battle. And years ago you'd say, well, you have antivirus on your computer and that's sufficient, but it isn't enough nowadays. And of course the biggest, weakest link in all this is the user, the human, who will click on a link that's received in an email. That's the most common issue or reason for a ransomware attack. Somebody clicks on an innocent link in an email, and then it opens it up to the hackers to take control of the system of whatever the company they work for. So it does feel that we are at war with all this, and it's definitely got worse, because I think a lot of this is state sponsored.
Okay, well, I've got to ask you now then. What's your top tips? What's your top tips for helping us alleviate this kind of stuff, Roger?
So the first big one is having two-factor authentication enabled. So for years we've relied on the password, and there's been all those previous things where people used obvious passwords. But if you have two-factor authentication enabled, that's where you have to do a secondary confirmation, usually on a mobile phone or something that is independent from the password, to confirm that it's you logging on. And people like Microsoft now are starting to enforce that. That is the most obvious one. And that's the one that the Information Commissioner's Office say is the biggest thing to prevent a cyber attack, or to massively reduce the risk, is to have the two-factor authentication. The other one is clearly to have antivirus, but that's only a starting point, as I said. The other point is to have a product that pre-scans your emails. So if there is a dodgy link, it will isolate it. And a lot of people don't have that, but it is quite easy to click on a link that you shouldn't. So if you have something that pre-scans it as well. And the third point is backup. Obviously, I've done this for 36 years, and it's always been about backup, even before the internet. If you've got a good backup, then if you do have a disaster, you can get everything back.
Well, I know over the years you've told me this time and time again. As you looked after our stuff, and it is a real worry. You know, if you're running your company, you could take the whole company come down just because one person clicks onto something. And I have a personal friend of mine, really good friend, who lost £100,000 to fraud, and nearly destroyed his marriage. He was very, very fortunate. He had a very understanding partner. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that, Roger. But let's go over to you now, Richard. Let's talk about the History Festival. Richard, fantastic coming down the tracks. Who have we got?
Well, we got lots of fascinating stuff, Mark. And actually, it's interesting that Roger was talking about cyber and fraud and everything like that. When I was on the Committee for National Security Strategy, we looked very closely at different ways of trying to protect local government after Gloucester, of course, was so badly hacked precisely by somebody clicking on a poisonous link. So we're covering a little bit of that in the History Festival, spycraft in the era of Elizabeth I to the Restoration. But some of the headline speakers will be familiar to people tuning into Punchline, because we've got comedian Frank Skinner, for example, alongside some of the famous TV historians like the gorgeous Alice Roberts. David Olusoga is a regular, as you know. But we've also got people across the political spectrum talking about more recent history, from Alan Johnson, Vince Cable, Michael Heseltine and Jeremy Hunt. And then we've got some great people like Greg Jenner, who are very well known to particularly the younger generation who grew up with horrible histories. We're covering pretty well the whole world, and I'm absolutely thrilled that this year we got Sebastian Folkes, who will be familiar to people who love books like Birdsong and Charlotte Gray, talking about how history has shaped basically his historical novels, which is a really interesting subject. So about 60 talks in Blackfriars. This year we've also got free talks in the scriptorium organised by Voices Gloucester. Of course, we've got Gloucester Day, which is the kick-off on Saturday, the 6th of September. You've got the Open Heritage Days. So it's a big thing, the festival. The Blackfriars talks are at the heart of it, but there are all these other things happening. And I can only encourage people who listen or watch Punchline to go and have a look at gloucesterhistoryfestival.co.uk.
It's a great event, and I get to meet so many fantastic speakers. And I'm going on as well this year. Like normal, you know, Punchline does support it. We're one of the sponsors too. So thanks ever so much for that, Richard. How many people do you reckon it's going to bring into the city?
Well, it's always hard to be absolutely sure, because if we sell 25,000 tickets, some of those, of course, will be to repeat customers. And with the digital streaming side, of course, we're building up a huge audience that stretches from Tasmania to Kyoto and goodness knows where else. But what my new co-chair, Andrew Pitt, and I and the rest of the trustees hope is that people who want the physical experience of being there in the same room and having their book signed by some of these people who we see on TV screens the whole time, movers and shakers, will come to Blackfriars and also take the chance to nip into Southgate Street, have some food and drink around the city centre, wander down to Food on the Docks, which is literally a hop and a skip away, and get a chance to see what an amazing place Gloucester is. Last week in London, I met a woman who asked me where I was from. I said Gloucester, and I waited for her reaction. And she said she'd been there recently, and she had no idea of the wonders of the city centre, which she had enjoyed. And that included, of course, the docks and Lantony Secunda and so on. But wandering around the city centre and seeing what's new in the cathedral and so on, she loved it. And I hope others will too.
Without a shadow of doubt. And I think the section of people in Gloucester now who've changed. And I do think that Gloucestonians have long last waking up to this. Don't you think, Richard?
Well, I think so. I hope so. We got others on the screen, of course, like Roger, who are part of the city and have seen the change. You know, not everything is perfect. We should never pretend that. Punchline would never do that. But you know, what you've been good at doing is promoting the good stories as well as highlighting some of other problems. And I think there are more good stories over the last, 10, 15 years than there are the negative ones.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks so much for that. Okay, let's bring you in, Julian. Great to have you on the show. I didn't realise that you spent 35 years in business before you become a politician. So you've just got voted in. You've been given this cabinet position. How's it going? What's the big change between politics and business?
It's more similar than you might think. And actually, I think when private enterprise works with the public sector well, exciting things can happen. So I try not to think of them as entirely different. And actually, I think a good example of business feeding off the public sector is what's happening with Golden Valley. So Golden Valley, and Roger has talked very eloquently about this subject, obviously has brought incredible skills to this county, and incredible knowledge to this county around cyber. And that's allowed us to build an ecosystem of businesses around cybersecurity around that. So that's a really good example. And to be fair to Tottenham Borough Council, they spotted an opportunity there. So that's a really good example of the public sector understanding what is being delivered, not by business in this case, but by a large organisation. It could have been a business, and creating business opportunities around that. So things I'm finding really exciting at the moment. So my key priority for me is digital, digital, digital. So what really frightens me and really excites me at the same time for the future of Gloucestershire is the AI revolution and what's happening with digital. So digital inclusion is really, really important. So making sure that, those people who struggle with digital get the help and support they need. But Gloucestershire must run at the speed of the fastest as well as the slowest, because we're about to see massive disruption, I think, coming. And I'm really conscious of that. When I went to university and did my useless degree in English literature, I couldn't imagine the jobs I would do because they were unimaginable, because they didn't exist. How we get our population ready for the unimaginable now is kind of the big question. So I think we need to be really, really ambitious about that for the county. Business and jobs transform lives. They make people, they give them self-esteem, self-respect, income, and so on. So the more we can do to help with that, I know we're going to get onto the issue of small businesses. SMEs are the backbone of what we do here, and something that I think that the county does really well is the growth hubs, and we can talk through that. So that's a facility where businesses can come in, get advice, use office space. We've got those in all the major centres across the county, and that's supported 16,000 small businesses. So that's GCC doing something to support 16,000 small businesses. I want us to be really ambitious about inward investment and make sure that we have a really good inward investment offer to get international businesses to come here. Again, I think we shouldn't be afraid of big businesses coming here, because when you get a best-in-class big business, they tend to be have really strong specialist areas, and then you get small businesses that spin off from them as people are trained and build knowledge. So I think we need to have, alongside our wonderful SMEs, some big best-in-class businesses coming in, which can give that really specialist training in areas. And then, again, a bit like we're getting with GCHQ and Golden Valley, we can get small businesses growing around them as people are trained up and move into the broader economy. So I'm really excited about this. As I said, I don't really see the public sector, private sector. It's not like people from public sector come from Mars, people from private sector come from Venus. that's false and unfair, I think, on both sectors.
Okay, no, thanks ever so much for that, Julian. And it's great that we have somebody who, with so much experience, who's worked in business and understands businesses, is actually leading the portfolio for business.
Really passionate.
It kind of makes sense. And I know a lot of us in the business community, we can come to this maybe. We'd be pleased to know that you've got all this, because that's the frustration of our government cabinet, who've not done anything in business. But that's a different aside for now. Let's bring Samina in. Samina, thanks ever so much for joining us today. Let's talk about your product. I'm going to bring up the screen, please, because you and I met in, I think it's Morton on the Marsh, wasn't it? It was Morton on the Marsh. There we go. Right. I was delivering my magazines, as I do, all over the Cotswolds, and there you were there was a whole load of market stalls, and as I went from market stall to market stall, handing out the magazines as well, I bumped into Samina. Samina, Gold Earth, what is it, please? And tell us about your product.
Yeah, so Gold Earth is actually started not as a business plan or anything like that. It's actually started from my personal journey. I went through extremely bad hair loss due to ill health. And I remember going to the doctors after trying everything else, and the GP said, I think you're having alopecia. I still remember coming home absolutely in tears. And I don't know if that you will understand, especially for women, losing hair is something extremely difficult. And I'm not saying it's not for men, but for women I see it as my identity. I'll talk about myself. And I remember asking my girls if they could shave my head. They ran a mile. It's like, there's no way we're doing this. It was actually my mother, the end, she said to me, you got carried away in so much in Western world and you've forgotten your heritage. We make these oils. She made these oil and sent it to me. So I thought, okay, I got nothing to lose. And it was made of a lot of ingredient, a lot of oil recipe. And being a beautician in past, I kind of slowly started modifying it and made other things to it that it was good for mine and the water in the UK, because it's very hard, full of fluoride. So that's how the journey began. And today I'm sitting here with everybody says to me, oh, I love your hair. I love your hair. And they don't know the story that what happened. So then the skincare came. So really the Gold Earth hair product is not just about product. It's a story. It's a healing. There is heritage.
So do you manufacture these yourself then?
So I not manufacture. I handcraft them. Everything happened by hand. I label the bottle myself. I make the product myself, and then I go around the markets, on the line, on website. There's small batches I make and I promote it. And so far, if you look at all the reviews, these are 5-star reviews. I had amazing feedback. And believe it or not, when I'm in the markets, the amount of people comes and just hug me. And that means the world to me, that yes, I have made a difference. I have made a change.
I mean, it must be.
And it's only been 7 months actually. So
I mean, it must be hard. I know for a fact it's hard work, isn't it? Because I thought about you when I left you, and it was just to very explain, because on this market stall, it was a very hot day, right? It was around 30 degrees. The sun was shining. You were with somebody else there. There were lots and lots of people around, and I thought after this is finished, you've got to box all this back up, take it back home. How much is a stall like that, Samina? How much does it cost you to have a stall?
That stall would cost me around 40. So anything between 40 to 70 pound, depend which area it is. And then when I do the events, that's 100 pound to 150 pound a day. Now, the footfall, if it's there, great. And it's not just the footfall. You have to work hard. I mean, I don't sit. I leave home around 5 a.m. I get home sometime 6, sometime 9. It depends, 7 days a week. And then when I get home, I have a family, I have children, I have home to run. So it's not an easy job, and I'm not the only one. I see other mothers, a micro business where, or and I know this one guy who was telling me he actually slept in he put a zip around his gazebo, and he slept on the floor because it was too expensive for him to drive home and and then come back. So it was better to just leave the setting and sleep there, so that way he can wake up and everything is already there.
I must admit, it must be very weather dependent as well, because if it pours down with rain, you guys are there, it's going to wipe out
Yes.
any profit that you can make.
Sometimes it's incredibly hard, but the spirit, I mean, working closer with the other traders, one thing I learned from them is the spirit, the strength, the belief. And you know what amazing is, people don't realize, but from other shopkeeper told us that the day of the market, even their shops are more busy. People do come out to the market, and I feel that it's been overlooked. There is not much support out there for the market traders.
So, can I ask you, if you don't mind sharing with us, how much are you expecting to make on a good day on a market stall?
On a good day, I would say around 300.
Okay.
Then depend on, that is a very good day, and depend then on paying the rent. Obviously you do need lunch, or and then petrol, depend how far you go, because I go all the way up to an hour and a half, or is where you are. So yeah, if you take all those expenses out sometime, and some days, I've been fortunate that I haven't been in that situation, but I have seen who people been paying out of their pocket, and week after week, and they, and we keep telling each other, don't give up, just stay strong, stay in there.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I must admit, I know other people who've worked in these market stalls, and I know how difficult and hard work it really is. And let's bring this in about micro businesses. What more can, today's hot topic is that. So I'm going to give it to you, Richard. What more could be done to help our very small startup businesses? We talked about the hubs and things, which are great, but
it's a massive question, Mark, and you're quite right that Punchline focuses on this, because ultimately the future of jobs and employment opportunities in our county is going to depend as much on the micro businesses and the small business startups as on the big ones and the ecosystem created by people like GCHQ and Safran in the aerospace world. And the truth is, as I saw yesterday in my younger son's micro business, is there are two elements that are absolutely vital. The first is, if you're dependent on equipment and technology, you need to be able to access capital, finance, in order to make those investments. You can't do it out of your own pocket when you're a young person starting out. So we need our financial ecosystem, the banks and so on, to want to lend to micro businesses and to be able to make good decisions based on a belief in the product and the ambition of the individual. The second one, if you're not in a big technology sector, is really about hiring people. And for that, you need to have flexible employment policies. You've got to be able to take on young people aged 16 who want to leave school for whatever reason at a reasonable wage that's good for them, but also good for the business. That means encouraging apprentices and not putting the start costs too high. Because if you put everybody on the same national wage, whether they're 16 with no experience or 21 with a lot of experience, then what's going to happen is the business will not give those young people the opportunity. And so my worry at the moment is, particularly with this new employment bill, is that with the best intentions and the aspiration to try and drive up wages, which is a good one, the government is risking actually putting employers off from taking on young people. You can see it in the hospitality sector already across the county. And if we don't get this right, then young people won't get those starting chances.
Richard, I couldn't agree with you more. When I was out travelling around, I met somebody who said they're not taking on their normal 3 apprentices this year. They just can't afford it. Why would I pay £18,500 for a young kid who's 18 years old, who knows absolutely nothing, no life skills? And he might not even stay. And this is the big problem that you're going to have. I'm going to bring Roger in because Roger, you employ lots of people on the micro business side. What do you reckon that can be done to help people?
So I've got to echo Richard's what Richard said. So for me, having been in business for 36 years, the biggest challenge when you start a business is raising some finance. Now, luckily for me, my father at the time lent me £5,000, and that got me going. And the problem is with the traditional big banks, trying to get them to lend you money, even as an established business, you have to go through the hoops, sign away your home, sign, personal guarantees. But one thing that is good, and there was an article in Punchline from about British Bank actually doing a lot of lending to startup businesses with startup business loans, which to me is absolutely critical, the finance, because a lot of businesses do need to buy some asset to actually get going. And when you're starting out and you haven't got any money, I appreciate we can't just lend money willy-nilly. There has to be a criteria. But it's great to see there's so many other offerings other than the traditional banks to help people get started and get finance. And also the bit about the national insurance for employers going up as a real killer, particularly in businesses where it's lower paid type of jobs. You mentioned hospitality. And this is really not helping. It just feels like businesses are being hammered. And the thing is, it's really hard work running a business. I'm lucky I'm in IT. Everyone needs IT, but whatever the business, it is really hard work, and you need to be really committed to make a success of it. And the government needs to be helping businesses. And you cannot keep taxing the hand that feeds. And small business is the backbone of the country, as we know. And we talked earlier, Julian talked about big business coming to Gloucestershire, and the spin-offs that you get, all these other businesses, smaller businesses, as spin-offs from the big corporate, the national business. But you cannot keep taking away from the hand that feeds. And I feel quite passionate about it because it is a big problem, and we are in a difficult time because of the current government not understanding what it's like to run a business. Sorry, I started.
No, totally agree. I mean, it's like Samina going from one bit like when I first started as well, from my front living room, going from one, myself employing my first person, because 1 and 1 needs to equal 3. What if the salary doesn't match that? But I was talking to a plumber the other day, and he there's 2 people in the plumbing business, him and I won't say who it is, but and they've taken on a young other plumber. And he said, at the moment, we're not making any money. I'm just paying the guy's wages. And luckily he's in a plumbing business that is doing quite well. Julian, very quickly, what do you think Gloucester County Council could do more to help businesses like Samina really sort of kickstart them forward?
So first of all, I hear Roger's passion, and actually I'm sure Richard will agree, there's nothing more annoying than politicians who take credit for the economy. It's actually people like Roger and Samina and the people who take risks and set up their own businesses who drive the economy. It's not the politicians. But what you can do, and what GCC can do, hopefully, is be an enabler and support those small businesses. So for instance, GCC gives net zero support on how to get your small business to net zero. Now, that is obviously good for the planet, but also more and more when companies are procuring, they're asking about your net zero credentials. What are your environmental credentials? So you have to prove that you're doing a good job on that front as part of the procurement process. So we can help businesses with that. As I mentioned, the growth hubs, I think, have been really valuable. So people in small businesses actually can be quite isolated and feel on their own. So to have places that they can go, which give them office space, which give them meeting rooms, but critically give them advice is really, really valuable because it helps. Sometimes when you're too close to something, you don't see the wood from the trees, so it helps to speak to someone and get a bigger context. And that's, someone who understands business in general and is working with other businesses. So I think that's been a really successful thing. So the more support we could give, the better, basically.
Okay, thanks ever so much. And I joined the Federation of Small Business, Samina, and because I felt very isolated working from home, and in the end I became regional chair. But without them, some of these people are still my really great friends after 30 years. And when I felt really quite low, you can actually talk to somebody like that, which again, as Julian rightly says, the hubs are there nowadays too. But Federation of Small Business, what they do too, great job. Okay, thanks ever so much, guys. We're gonna wrap this up because I am over time already. We've got the pick of the punchlines. Okay, let's start with you. Roger. What's the pick of the punchlines, please? This week.
So I'm going to go back to my dwarf wall story where you made me look grumpy on the punchline, and thanks to you, so essentially my dwarf wall that I own and holding up Lion Court homes, and thanks to you, it went national. I couldn't believe how much my story went national. BBC, all the papers. Even got to a paper in Scotland. I just couldn't believe it, and it was all because you put it in punchline, Mark. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks ever so much, mate. I really agree with that.
And I still look grumpy about it. Sorry.
I'll talk to you when you get the money, mate.
Yeah,
Richard, what have you picked out from this week's punchline, please?
Okay, well, what I've done, Mark, in my mind is combine two stories that you've run. One is about the fact that effectively Renishaw are withdrawing from their site in Wootton. It may be used for automotive work, but nonetheless, it's a contraction of jobs in the county. They're going to use their Wales site much more. And the second one, of course, is sadly similar, which is that Lloyd's are withdrawing from Barnwood. That'll be about 40 jobs, moving to Bristol, which, of course, is a bigger financial hub. Now, the thing is, both of those together are rather gloomy stories because we need people in Gloucestershire to be able to have local jobs rather than depending on commuting to Bristol or Wales. But there are positives as well. We know that Amazon is finally sort of expanding here. Costco is coming to Eastern Avenue. And there are specialist businesses, particularly in Roger's sector and cyber and so on, which are growing quite fast, which we don't necessarily know about. And so I think the challenge possibly for Punchline now is to try and wrap some of these stories up into a sort of what's happening to jobs in Gloucestershire type approach. Because for me, that is the single biggest indicator of the health of the county. If jobs are growing, then people who are moving here and living here have got great opportunities. If they're not and they're shrinking, then there's trouble ahead. And I think it's a mixed story, and it's quite difficult to untangle both employment figures and investment figures. But, that is critical to us understanding what this county is doing and where it's going. So thank you for covering those stories.
Thank you, Richard. And I think we're so lucky that we're so blessed with such a wide section of the business community, especially in the avionics industry, medical. We really, farming, agriculture. Thankfully we've got it all here, right in our doorstep. We couldn't be so more lucky. So lucky. Samina, I'm going to bring you in. What have you picked out from this week's punchline?
Well, I was gonna, if it's okay, if I could change it, I was gonna discuss something else, but I think what we were discussing, and I was listening to Julian and Richard and Roger, and I just wanted to say this. I'm not a big brand or a bold one, and Gold Earth is a proof that small hands can create something powerful. Micro business, mega hard, maximum impact. I don't just sell oil. I pour my story into every bottle. I wave the Union Jack because I build this country too. You want real Britain? Look at this market, its makers, its micro businesses. We're not asking for charity, we're asking for chances. This is what the flags mean to me: freedom to create, to heal, and to belong. Behind every stall is a story. Behind every Gold Earth is mine. don't underestimate the power of one woman, one stool, and one flag. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Samina. That is the funniest Punchline says we've had in
I
this
just
show.
had to change it.
That's just a pitch. That's just a fair play.
I had to.
Reminds me of
Ju-
the body shop, the body
Yeah.
shop.
The body shop.
Yeah.
Julian. Okay, what do you pick very quickly, please, sir?
So mine is about the Owl Court Transport Hub. So the Owl Court Transport Hub is a hub where it's a park and ride facility where you can get on coaches, and it links up well with Golden Valley, with the rest of the county. You can also leave your bike there. You can also get EV scooter hire there. The reason why I think it's interesting, and it actually links to the other story, which is GCC to take over Honeybourne's cycle line link scheme, is that it's really important that when we think about our transport and infrastructure, we think about it in a joined up way. So it's really important that people can get out of cars, onto buses, onto bikes, or they can take the cycle lane through Cheltenham and get on the train, or get off the train and get on the cycle lane. And we haven't been joined up enough in those sorts of things. And to go to the cycle lane story, that has stalled for years with GWR in terms of getting that link to the trains. It will be a hallelujah moment if someone can take their bike on the train, get off the train, and go on a cycle lane. It should be joined up.
Okay, no, I totally agree with that. We'll watch this space. What I'd like to see is more people using the cycle paths. They spent millions and millions on it. And I can tell you now, going along that Cheltenham Old Road, and you see that fantastic cycle path, and you've got the cyclists who's still cycling on the bloody road. No, nothing more infuriating than that after you spent millions of pounds on it. Okay, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. I just want to say a thank you to my wonderful panel. It's been really great discussions today. I'd like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, and I'd like to thank all of you for watching. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back again next week. But until then, remember, it's all in the punchline. Thanks ever so much. Bye, everybody.